So today, I'm going to tell you a little story of owl, which I'm going to tell you in much more detail during my full message a little later. So this is what? It's an owl. So this owl is a special owl in that its name the New Yorkers in New York City gave, and the name is Flacco. Say hi, Flacco. Yeah. So about a little over a year ago, somebody cut the mesh in a cage in Central Zoo in New York, where Flacco was living in captivity. And they never caught who this vandal who cut the mesh underneath. And guess what? Flacco said, "Thank you very much," and escaped zoo. And so he lived for a little over a year free. And he lived mostly in Central Park, which is a public park, which is a huge park in the middle of the city. And New York people fell in love. And they started taking pictures, and they would gather to look for Flacco. And they posted online, and it became a global phenomenon. So entire world fell in love with Flacco. And they just wanted to know the new sighting, where they found him, and they found him in like rooftop in the tall building, and sometimes he showed up in the window of an apartment, startled people. But unfortunately, he flew one day and hit the window of a building, and then he got really injured. Yes, he flew into the window and he died. And so it's a sad story, but Flacco became a hero to New York people and for the world, because he symbolized freedom, and he symbolized living true to what he was, which was an owl, to be wild and free. And so he got to live for a little over a year, true to his form as an owl, as a wild creature living free, to be himself. So he had a wonderful, glorious life, even though it was short. So today, so when is your birthday, Vance? Huh? Do you know your birthday? What is it? Okay. And when is your birthday? January 26th. So what's today? March 3rd. That's right. Well, today is my birthday. And I am 66. I'm still alive and kicking. But, you know, there's a saying, there are three most important days in your life. One is the day you were born, and two, day you realized why you were born. And the third is the day you act on your why. So you may be too young to maybe appreciate the importance of this 3 days, but that's something that you might want to remember and also to discuss with your parents. Say, parents, says, Dad, Mom, are you living your three most important days in your life? The day you were born, day you realized why. Says, Dad, do you know why you were born? And then, are you living the life you were born to live?
The first Hebrew reading is taken from Exodus chapter 19, verse 4. Tell the people of Israel You have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. The second Hebrew reading is taken from Isaiah chapter 4, verse 3. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Please stand for the reading of the Gospel, John chapter 10, verse 10. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. The word of God for the people of God.
So this is an artist who painted Flacco, and it says there, a year in the concrete jungle with Flacco, the most famous owl in the world, it says. For New Yorkers, the death of Flacco, the beloved Central Eurasian eagle owl that escaped from the Central Park Zoo a year ago after someone cut the mesh wire to his small cage, was a painful ending to a glorious year of freedom. Flacco, a wild Eurasian eagle owl, is an Exodus story of liberation, and the Easter story, the story of resurrection of our time. Next. Born in captivity, Flacco lived a dozen years in a comfortable cage in the Central Park Zoo. But Flacco's life at the zoo was unremarkable. You know, people just looked at it and said, interesting, and they would, move on to the next animal to see. Next. Only after he was free from the Central Park Zoo by a vandal in February of 2023, he began to inspire a true awe. For a little over a year, subsequent sightings captivated New York City and fans around the globe. Next. Flacco kept attracting crowds, not just because he was such a glorious bird with his marvelous ear tufts and splendid 6 feet wingspan, but also because we were touched by his yearning to fly free. We didn't want to see him on exhibit. We wanted him to soar and thrive. Next. Almost from the moment he was released, Flacco became a symbol of hope for many of the people who followed his story and recognized parts of themselves in him. Some saw in him as the embodiment of the American dream, an outsider who had come to Manhattan and made a life for himself, like millions of others who arrived penniless and unconnected in their quest for freedom and better life. Next. Moreover, the city loved Flacco because he represented so much of what urban dwellers miss about their lives: connection to the wild nature and the freedom to live their true lives in the wild. Next. It wasn't because they were all naive about the challenge that came with his freedom. After Flacco took up residence in the New York Central Park, adoring crowds regularly gathered around his favorite tree. Next. And people constantly worry about all the threats to him from an urban environment: rushing cars, buildings, eating poisoned rats. Next. You see the little rat that Flacco captured? But Flacco was far more resilient, stubborn, and scrappy than most anyone had given him credit for. Next. Day after day, he hooted and fluffed and spread his magnificent wings and flew above people's heads in defiance of all the prediction of its demise. Next. Zoo officials kept trying to capture him with a trap full of frozen dead rats and with audio recording of the other female eagle owls calling him and luring him. An especially cruel irony, given that his solitary captivity meant he had been denied of mate. But instead of being lured back by a recording siren song from a boombox, Flaco never looked back. Next. He refused to go into the cage. Though the animal literature is peppered with stories of animals, usually pets, who suffered hardship and returned home, Flaco never retreated to the zoo again. Perhaps freedom itself was his home that he discovered, and he loved it so much he wasn't going to give it up. And though we feared for him, his new life thrilled all of us who were fan of Flaco. Next. Flaco took flight and learned to hunt on his own. And he embraced his liberty, the city whose symbol is not named, the statue of captivity, and is not engraved with call for the huddled masses yearning to eat frozen food alone in a small cage. People identified with the free spirit of Flaco and celebrated along. Next. So, what did Flaco taught us about ourselves and about life? First, we are reminded that we humans are not the biggest things, nor the only game in town. They are creatures that God made that have rightful place to live and thrive on this planet. And reminded us of that they are our relatives who has right to exist alongside of us. 2, to my mind, the real gift of an owl's stealth is the example it sets for how to be in the world. Owl invites us to move through life more quietly, to still ourselves, to notice sights and sounds that might otherwise go unnoticed. For owls, quiet invisibility is a defense or disguise. Owling opens the senses we often neglect. The sound of wind rustling through the leaves on trees, smell of pine and vine, hemlock and jasmine. Early morning when I take a walk, I pass by this house. Over the fence, the jasmine bush is blossomed. And so I will always stop to smell the jasmine. And reminds me of a song that I grew up with by Seals and Croft. Remember that song? Summer breeze makes me feel fine. And then it says, reminds me of the jasmine. Jasmine, it brings jasmine in my mind, something like that is the lyric. So yeah, it's a lovely smell that nature has to offer to us for us to enjoy. By the way, the best things in life are free. Next. So I'll teach patience. For us, it's a privilege, one that if we are lucky, may yield an owl sighting. Next. Owls are mostly nocturnal animals. By the way, all these pictures are Flacco. And Flacco inspired arts. They come out at night to hoot and hunt. I discovered one of my two spiritual animals is an owl. You may not know, but I went on a shamanic journey of vision quest a while back. And in that vision quest in the forest led by a shaman, I saw a vision of an owl. So I had a vision and I saw an owl. Owl is a symbol of messenger of the night. And so the owl represents a message for us to pay attention to our dreams and the message from the unconscious. They say that the unconscious basically governs our lives. And a best way to describe unconscious is the iceberg. So what's conscious, meaning above the water, is only a small part. But the vast part of who we are, the knowledge of who we are, is below the water. And it's huge. And so accessing that unconscious material is a treasure. Treasure that will make us more whole, complete, and alive. So it's a buried treasure, as Jesus says in his parables, one of his parables, the buried treasure. Once you discover where the buried treasure is located, you'll sell everything, the pearl of great price, in order to purchase that lot that has buried treasure underground. So that's one of the lessons that Flacco is teaching us. Pay attention to your dreams and excavate your unconscious materials, because they are rich and they are your treasures. 4, Flacco reminded us to return to our truest selves. He taught us an experience that cannot be bought, cannot be imitated. Our external markers for self-definition do not define us. Our measurements of social success, fabricated hierarchies, attractiveness, money are benign and for all useless. We are not ruled by our possessions, by looks, by likes on social media, but rather being true to who we are, wild and gloriously alive. Next. On Friday, last Friday, February the 23rd, Flacco died of acute traumatic injury, perhaps from a collision with the Manhattan apartment building's glass windows. Flacco would have turned 14 in March of this year. While Eurasian eagle owls can live more than 40 years in captivity, but only 20 on average in the wild, in the natural habitat. And you see a woman who's one of the fans is laying flowers of a tree where Flacco frequented to pay tribute in loving memory of the beloved Flacco. Finally, 5, his death offers us a chance to reckon with the question at the heart of many a hero's journey. Can we put a price on freedom? Flacco's liberation from his comfortable confinement came at a cost. He spent the final years of his life free, but threatened from all sides by a booming city that never sleeps. And so, was it worth it? Next. Flacco, even though short-lived, taught us a profound truth. Wild animals can only thrive in the wild. And therefore, when he was displayed in the zoo where his true glorious self was not manifested, not lived out, it's one of thousands of birds and animals here. It was only when he was released and he was able to manifest his true being, wild and just full of life, that it captured our imaginations and we fell in love with him. So these wild animals cannot thrive as a commodity on display in a zoo, no matter how safe and comfortable it is. I couldn't imagine having an almost 6-foot wingspan and not being able to use it. How many of us, our circumstances familiar and safe, are too timid to seek our more fully realized selves? How many of us, viewing our confinement as nothing out of the ordinary, having long stopped wondering what our wings are for? And in a deep way, Flacco confirmed what we all know, that we are created to be free and gloriously alive as we are created to be. When I was going to seminary in the 80s, in the early 80s, there was a graduate student from Hong Kong, and I can't recall his name, but he came with his wife and a little toddler child. And he was living at a time when Hong Kong's 100-year loan to British was coming to an end. And so there were a lot of anxiety by, how do you say, Hong Kongians? How do you call them, Hong Kongians? But anyway, they were anxious what it means that we lived a free and democratic country, nation, and now we are now given back to China, communist China, and what happens to our freedom? What happens to our sovereignty and democratic rule? Is it all going to be taken away? And so he actively wrote letters and for us to sign for American president and Secretary of State and to UN, all over, saying that democratic rule has to be protected. And he was dying of cancer, and he was losing weight, and there was a sort of gathering to knowing that he was not going to live very long. We had a gathering one evening with his wife and a child and him and our seminarians. And he says, you are an inspiration to us because, you're not going to live very long, and yet you live as if you're going to live forever. And you are doing all this social activism for Hong Kongians. And he said, it's not how much time you have in life, but how much life you have in time. And I never forgot that. It's not how much time you have in life, but how much life you have in time. I am the resurrection and the life. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. In the middle of the night, I heard the sound of owl hooting. I went out to hear the owl hooting, the call of the wild, and I was grateful. So I read you this poem written by L. Barron in tribute to Flacco. He's a New Yorker, and he titled this poem Life. Owls with feathers soft and warm, their lives a journey through the storm. In the night they take to flight, their lives a thing of beauty pure and bright. They guide through the sky so still, their lives a silent thrill, their hoots a call to all who hear, their lives a song of love and cheer. In the trees they rest and wait, their lives a journey to fate, F-A-T-E. Their eyes wise and ever knowing, their lives a story worth showing. So let us learn from the owl's life that each day is worth the strife, for in the end it's all we have, life, a precious thing to hold dear and hold fast. So goodbye, Flacco. You will be dearly missed. We will remember you as a bird that flew free in a city that survives and flourishes despite all the challenges and attempt to stifle its spirit. And so I wrote a poem for Flacco, and this will conclude my message. It's called The Divine Soul Play. My eyes meet yours. We pause. The sparkle in your eyes. I am sinned by you. A window of life opens up. I breathe you in, and I exhale, and you breathe in mine. And even just for a moment, we remember what it means to be fully alive. We remember that this is exactly what we're here for, to wake up the wild child inside, to love courageously, to embrace the fullness of our humanity and the fullness of our divinity, to allow the divine flow to move through us, and we take flight together, being gloriously alive. Gratitude for all that has been, full presence to all that is, and unwavering hope for all that will be. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, abide in you and go with you, now and evermore. Amen.